we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time listening, welcome to the podcast. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, if you guys want to support the podcast, check us out at patreon.com/thebigmarkpod. You can subscribe to the podcast any way you'd like, anywhere you listen. Write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts if you can. Every little bit helps. And if you like what you hear today, tell a friend. All we want to do is everyone just tell one friend, and we'll double the listenership of the podcast, as we like to say. So anyway, let's get into the episode today. So again, it's just me and you. Like I always like to do these little one-on-ones. We've been doing them a little bit more, and I tried to do something where it was, a guest, then a solo, guest solo. And, maybe had to do a little bit with the pandemic and everything, and it was harder to get people in, although we did a lot on Zoom, which was totally fun. I've just been really enjoying them, with Christian not being able to do so much of the production work anymore. It's been great to be doing these things totally solo. So, it's really easy for me to set this up whenever I can and go to town, which is super fun. So anyway, glad you're here. And, we're going to be talking about a little something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, something that, I really enjoy. And, when I do these podcasts, I always kind of think, are people really going to be into this stuff? And I think, this is the kind of stuff I'm into. So whoever's listening, if you're anything like me, you're probably going to enjoy it just as much. But anyway, it's about Kenny versus Spenny, which was a show, if you've never heard of it, but if you know me, you've probably heard of it. Back in the early 2000s, started a Canadian show. A couple Canadian guys did it, and it was one of my favorite shows of all time. So, Kenny versus Spenny. So obviously, two guys, one guy named Kenny, one guy named Spenny, and their show is a competition-based kind of thing where they both compete in a series of different competitions. And, kind of see who wins. And, it's one of the quotes is glory for the winner, humiliation for the loser. So essentially in these mini competitions or whatever that episode's certain competition is, whoever wins, it gets the glory, and whoever loses, has to, suffer a humiliation, which the winner gets to choose and makes them do something completely wild, which is again, it's a comedy show. It used to be on Showcase, where I used to watch it, which was a great Canadian channel. I think it still exists on cable. Can't remember. That was, it was kind of like, depending on what time you were watching, it was kind of like the more like risque channel in Canada. I don't know what the comparable channel would be in any other nation. But sometimes, like if it was really late at night, they'd have like straight up basically like softcore porn. They'd have nudity stuff going on. I think they showed movies. And sorry, I'm just pulling up my notes here on the phone. And again, they were, it was on this channel, which Trailer Park Boys was on, a few other different shows. I can't even remember, but the reason why I used to watch Trailer Park Boys in the first place was because of Kenny versus Spenny, because Trailer Park Boys used to come on after Kenny versus Spenny. And I even remember the first time watching Trailer Park Boys going like, oh my gosh, like, is this real? Like, because Kenny versus Spenny is, the way it's shot, it's meant to seem like it's 100% real. I'll go into a little bit more of the kind of characters that the two guys play, but they basically, it's more or less a reality show. So then with the Trailer Park Boys coming on right after, it was kind of one of those things where, you're kind of already in that mindset. And then the way Trailer Park Boys was just set up was to kind of be like a mockumentary. So tremendous. Again, got me into watching that. So a little bit about the two guys before we get into more about the show and its impact and all kinds of that crazy stuff. So Kenny Joel Hotz and Spencer Nolan Rice. Their names come up obviously all in the show. It's their real names. That's who they are. At the time of the show, Kenny was 36 and Spenny was 40 when they first started the show. So they were a little bit older, kind of into their careers a little bit at this point, clearly. Both in show business, both writing for different shows, trying their best. Kenny actually started his career as a Gulf War journalist, who was actually in the Gulf War. He talks about it in one of the episodes, who can be a better journalist. That he was dodging scuds and doing all that stuff. So that's kind of how he started his whole career. He actually did some writing and consulting for South Park, which is really interesting. That'll come up in a second. He's actually the godson of Joni Mitchell. In some of my research I was looking up, I never realized that he had any relation, the godson at least, to Joni Mitchell, which is wild. And then yeah, again, so Spenny was doing some writing too. He had written some movies. And again, they're both a little bit older, getting into their careers when they first pitched the show, I guess, or came up with it. I know the pilot was actually shot when they were still living in LA. So, but before they moved back to Ontario, I swear the first season they're living somewhere in Hamilton, but I think it's most of the show is definitely seasons 2 through 6. There was only 6 seasons. Was definitely filmed in Toronto. There was, where they live is clearly like in Leslieville or something like that. Like for sure somewhere in Toronto. And it's super cool. Like, I mean, obviously growing up in Hamilton, I had an interesting relationship with Toronto. It was something where you don't go to it always. I mean, it's 45 minutes away. It's pretty close, but, maybe go to a special show there or a special concert or some sports. But growing up there, I went there every once in a while and, I was never really, apart from hating the Argos, sports never really was enough to be like, oh, I hate Toronto, or there's some kind of weird beef between Toronto and Hamilton, even though now, Hamilton's always been seen kind of as a bit of a rough town, which it is, but, it is what it is. And Toronto obviously is the biggest city and, is basically the ersatz capital of Canada, which is interesting. But, watching Kenny versus Spenny, excuse me, sorry, that was brewing. Watching Kenny versus Spenny, you see them around town when they're doing stuff. They go over the Scarborough Bluffs in one of the episodes. Again, it's really cool, like just seeing the town, and obviously not the number one, probably tourist film that they want to show to tourists for the city of Toronto. But again, really cool. It being a Canadian show, it being so close to home, which is super awesome. Actually, one episode they go to Jordan. Shout out Jordan. Shout out Flat Rock Cellars. Shout out McPherson family. It's, again, it's Southern Ontario. It's around. It's super cool, right? So them being close to home was always something that was really cool to watch. Again, like I said, started in 2003 when the boys were kind of into their career, and it went to 2010, 6 seasons. And like I said, when Kenny was writing for South Park, Matt Stone and Trey Parker actually were executive producers of Kenny versus Spenny. So the guys who created South Park were executive producers of Kenny versus Spenny, which is super cool. Again, like a bit of my take on it, Kenny and Spenny played kind of amped up versions of themselves. Obviously, I don't know who they are personally. I've only seen them in a few interviews and this and that, but from what they've said and what I've heard is that they kind of play up their character. So Kenny is this really outgoing, really wild dude, and then Spenny is this kind of lugubrious, more long face kind of straight man. So they're a great comedy duo because Kenny's wild and Spenny's a little bit more of that straight man, which again is that classic kind of comedy setup. And again, they ham it up for sure. And, but there's times where for sure it's not just acting, and you can kind of really see these guys for kind of who they are, and you really get to know them as the show goes on, because you see them at their best, you see them at their worst, you see them in full competition, you see them winning, you see them losing, because it wasn't like totally lopsided, but Spenny would win some, Kenny won a bunch, and so you could see them, and if anything, it was more revealing when you won because you had to make the guy do a humiliation. I felt that was even more telling. In my opinion, it told a lot about Spenny, and he's just kind of a little bit vindictive in that sense, where I felt Kenny kind of more so did everything that he did, even though it was wild, and some of the pranks he pulled, or some of the tactics that he would use were pretty wild. They were in the confines of the competition. He wanted to win the competition, where I feel Spenny would kind of go outside that, whether it was in the humiliation or just in weird little retaliations within the episode. He would kind of go outside things and kind of push the boundary and stuff. So I always thought that was a really interesting dichotomy. With all these competitions, they obviously have to come up with all these competitions. So I think the first season had like 26 episodes, and then each other season had about 10. So you can imagine them coming up with them, and I know that they had issues pitching a lot of them to the studio to showcase, I guess. And I know one of the episodes is who can smoke more weed. That was until like the last season that they were able to do that. So again, I think they probably had a lot of these wild, like even more wild competitions, and I won't go through all of them today. This is more of an encouragement to go watch it, and you can actually go watch all the episodes on YouTube. Kenny Hotz himself has put up all of the episodes of Kenny versus Spenny. I think he's put up the ones with commentary too, up on Showcase, or sorry, up on YouTube. Sorry, he put everything up on YouTube, which is super cool, and it allows you to just go to watch, because I think it used to be on Netflix, and now it ain't. Anywho, so a little bit more kind of about them. Again, I don't want to go through every episode, and I think again that kind of dichotomy of the Kenny versus Spenny person tends to kind of add to I used to watch this show. I actually watched the show with my mom a lot. She really loved the show. She thought it was funny. Her humor is very classic, kind of slapstick, and there's so much of that really classic slapstick humor that goes on in Kenny versus Spenny. Just the way Kenny is, he's very animated, he's very physical, and I felt that she actually used to be on Spenny's side more often, just because he kind of tended to be the underdog, and my mom always used to kind of cheer for the underdog. And I just love Kenny. I think, honestly, and I've admitted this before, but I feel like Kenny Hotz has had a major influence on my general comedic sense. I don't know what it is, just something about his comedy is so funny and so observational, and he's very quick-witted, even though he can kind of be mean and a little bit more of that practical joker type mentality / antagonistic. I just think he's hilarious. And like I mentioned before, here I actually have the win-losses here in my notes. So the problem with the show is that Kenny and Spenny have a fundamental disagreement about how to actually win. Kenny believes that if you do a humiliation, you, in a sense, have lost, therefore making the other guy the winner. And Spenny thinks if you win, you get to make the other guy do the humiliation. So if you win the competition fair and square. So that's kind of led Kenny to essentially cheat, bend the rules, full on cheat, full on go outside do all kinds of stuff, and it's really cool and super entertaining. But essentially he's cheated a lot, but if you go by his rules, he's essentially got Spenny to do the humiliation, so therefore he won in his definition, which is interesting. So if you look at that, if competitions where Kenny cheated 16 or arguably cheated 3 and 1 are not counted, the record would be 40-21 with 5 draws for Kenny. So Kenny's won most of them, really. I said they were pretty close before, but if they are counted as wins for Spenny, as Spenny suggests that they should, then Kenny and Spenny would be tied, literally with each 40 and 40 with 5 draws, which is actually wild. Note, though, Spenny cheated 8 times. So there's actually somewhere where Spenny had cheated. So even in those ones, therefore, Kenny would have been the winner by default or by cheating. Then still Kenny would have the better winning percentage. So essentially 73% to 73.75% to 26.25% for Kenny win percentage, which is really interesting. Again, like I said, sometimes Kenny would bend the rules or Spenny, and it was so funny where the times where Spenny would cheat. I wish I had the stat on this right now, but there'd be times where Spenny would cheat and he would still lose, which is money. So, like I said, I don't want to go through all the episodes, but I just have a little bit of a list of some of my favorite episodes. So the pilot, I think, is a great episode. It's like I said, they filmed it when they were still over in LA, when they were still living in LA chasing their dream. And it's who can gain the most weight. And basically, Spenny chooses to work out because he thinks muscle weighs more. And then Kenny just eats, doesn't move. He gets a walker. Just hilarious. I basically remember all of the humiliations, but I don't want to ruin any episodes for anybody. So I'll reveal a little bit about some of my favorites, but I won't reveal the actual humiliation. Which, again, sometimes, especially the first time you're watching it, it is just as funny. It's just part of the whole magic of the show. Just because, again, you get to see these guys kind of gloat, and like it's such a motivator for these guys because they don't want to do the humiliation. That it really pushes these guys in these competitions, which is hilarious. So conversely to who can gain the most weight, one of my other favorite episodes is who can lose the most weight, and that's from season 1. Again, Spenny opts to work out in this episode because he thinks he can work out enough and lose the most weight. And then Kenny in fact does cheat in this one. This is one of the episodes where he does cheat, and he gets like some solder, like plumber solder, and paints it black and like puts it in his hair so you can't see it. So when at the beginning of the competition they weigh themselves, right, to see who their starting weight, to see who can lose the most weight. And it was probably about half a pound of solder in the crown kind of thing that he wore. And it's funny, again, I don't know if I was kind of contemplating, should I even reveal them? Anyway, if I reveal them, I'm sorry, spoiler alert for all these. If not, go check them out anyway. I'm not going to reveal all the other funny stuff that actually happens, but who cares, right? Show's been out for a while. I should have watched it. If you haven't, check it out. Again, shout out to all my friggin' listeners from all over the world, because we get these statistics and it's showing it's people are from all over the world. Love y'all. Thank you so much for listening. Again, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys, so thank you. And if you guys never heard of Kenny versus Spenny, please tell your friends, no matter what it is. Sorry, guys, just one sec. Sorry, guys. Solo mission, boys. I got to do everything, boys and girls. Anyway, so Spenny actually ends up losing by like half a pound, even though he busts his ass, and Kenny literally like gets like pedicures and stuff, and drains and like his colon flush and doesn't eat and just like does everything, gets a haircut. And he ends up winning by like a half pound, which probably was as much in the solder. Oh yeah, he was drinking like X-Lax and all kinds of crazy stuff like that, which is wild. Who can sell more Bibles from season 2? This is a hilarious one because it's one of those ones where it kind of transcends the actual competition. Obviously starts out who can sell the most Bibles. Each guy's going. They're, they have a certain amount of Bibles that they want to sell. Whoever sells the most wins. It's funny because they're both Jewish guys, but funny enough, because, on paper, it doesn't really seem like it's going to be a really good competition. So Kenny actually, because Spenny, being a writer, he had written the script years before and tried to pitch it. Hubert the Hippopotamus. Anyway, this whole thing where Kenny creates this whole scenario where he makes Spenny think that these executives from LA are trying to get him and trying to buy his script, and he ends up getting Spenny to fly over to LA, like a ticket, and it's just hilarious the way he ends up getting there too. So again, I don't feel like I'm revealing anything. Please watch them. One of the best episodes. And each competition, it can only be 3 days. So with Spenny flying away, Spenny ended up buying a bunch of Bibles from Kenny, kind of in like a cocky fit, and that's what ends up winning, which is so funny. Who can keep a dead octopus on their head? Season 3, one of the best ever episodes. Kenny ends up trying to he tries to trick Spenny into thinking that the octopus is poisonous by giving him acid. He feeds him 4 doses of acid, like in his orange juice in the morning. And my buddy B-Rye, shout out B-Rye. Shout out Mike Norman too. This episode's for you, brother. I know you've been watching some of these episodes, and he's been asking me lately. One of our loyal listeners, my good buddy Mike, he's been asking me some of the best episodes. So hopefully this gives you a little bit more insight, brother. Anyway, in the commentary, my buddy B-Rye, he has the DVDs and watched them, said that Spenny's taken more acid than Jim Morrison. So it wasn't really a danger. It wasn't something that Spenny's never done. I do not recommend dosing your friends. You know how I am on this podcast with responsible psychedelic use. But my God, what an episode it makes. I think I'll just leave that one there. So with a dead octopus and 4 hits of acid, only imagine where it could go. First one to get a stain loses. This is just one of my personal favorite ones from season 4. Each guy wears like basically like a morph suit with like the face cut out, and it's a pure white suit. And his first one to get a stain loses. So any stain from anything, each guy I think had like an hour to go and like clean and like get a bunch of supplies that you're gonna need, because you had to like dust every surface before you touched it and stuff. And early in the competition, Spenny ends up setting off a fire extinguisher inside. And if you've ever set off a fire extinguisher inside, trust me, it is not a pretty sight. It is like there's like a powdery substance in it, which helps extinguish the fire. And it just gets everywhere. You breathe it in, you're coughing, blah, blah, blah. There's an incident that happened in high school where we had to set off the fire extinguisher, and it just was brutal. It was in shop class, so we had to leave a class and just air the place out big time because it just gets everywhere. But it obviously forced everyone out of the house because Spenny friggin' set this thing off, and obviously they both get stains everywhere. So the competition quickly changed from who can get first one to get the stain loses to who is the least stained by the end of the day. And they did a bunch of high stain scenarios, like eating spaghetti dinner, and they had like a tug of war over like a bunch of red paint. So again, stuff like this, but there's just something about it. There's a great flow to the episode. The editing is cool. Again, you even kind of get to know the crew watching the episodes, because they're right there with Spenny and Kenny. Each have their own crew, and again, you kind of get to know the cameramen, the sound dudes. It's really, really cool. Sebi and Brendan and all those dudes. Shout out Nate Caranci and Alex Karowski too. Shout out my boys. Me, them, and some other guys from London have a little group called This Has Gone Too Far, But I Love It. And it's all just Kenny versus Spenny quotes and related info. So that's all we do. We don't really even say anything else on there. It's just related quotes. Sometimes guys reply on it, sometimes they don't. But hey, it's open and it will continue to go too far. And I love it. Another one that's kind of similar, First to Touch the Ground loses. That's in season 5. It's similar in the sense that it kind of starts going one way and it definitely changes hard going another way, which is so good. Morphs into this really interesting, almost James Bond-esque scenario, because in that episode where you can't touch the ground, essentially the floor is lava, is a giant game of that. Each guy has like set up different ways to get around the house without literally touching the ground. And like literally you could be standing on a book and you're not touching the ground. You're not touching the ground. So they set everything up, and then Spenny set up basically a sex swing, and because he thought he could just sit in it or whatever, ends up going in it. Kenny is like driving around in a scooter or something and ends up moving all of the way that any chance that Spenny can actually get off this sex swing. So he basically traps Spenny in the sex swing and turns into this James Bond villain and is calling Spenny Mr. Rice and has a pet rye bread. Oh my God. Again, tremendous. The way it actually has a kind of a twist ending on that one too. But just where these competitions start and where they finish sometimes are drastically different on the show, which is so funny. In season 6, who could put on the best commercial? The last season, some of the episodes I'd say were a little bit more polished. The guys were like in full swing. I think they knew it was the last season too, so they were kind of just making sure they went out with a bang. But it was really interesting. They go to like a advertising firm, and each guy is selling a frozen pizza, and they have to kind of do commercials for it. And just some of the commercials, like Kenny's idea is just to do a bunch of viral commercials online, shorts, real quick, doing them wild. Formaggio al forno is his pizza, and he just goes wild. And Spenny's approach, again, is a little bit more straight edge, classic, but he creates a make your own pizza for kids and tries to do like a classic commercial. And the kids he's working with and he's a freak show, and he scares the shit out of these kids with this Spozo clown that he comes up with. It's just a fucking mess, but tremendous. And again, just that Formaggio al Forno commercials, I just always think of that every time I cook a frozen pizza. Who's the better chef? There's another one I mentioned before that Spenny actually cheated and didn't win. So who can be a better chef? Obviously, the boys are cooking, and Kenny kind of has a natural gift for cooking. He likes to cook himself. Spenny can't cook. He never cooked. Actually, in the pilot, he tries to make himself a fucking pancake and can't even really manage to do that. So Spenny actually hires a professional chef to help him cheat, and he does like a whole like ratatouille thing with like a fucking headset and the guys in his ear telling him how to cook, and he still fucking loses at the end, which is so brilliant, and it's so Spenny, and it's hilarious. Oh man, first one to laugh from season 3 is so funny. So the first one to laugh loses. Again, Spenny being this lugubrious, downtrodden, kind of sad dude to begin with, you think for sure he's got this in the bag. Kenny's just such a fun-loving, jokey guy. He's always joking that it's so hard for him not to laugh. Then they end up bringing their friend Bobby in, who's just this absolute nut, and he does this fucking dance for them, and it's just tremendous. Like I can't even tell you how funny it is near the end, because again, they're trying to make each other laugh the whole time too, right? Some of Spenny's attempts are so fucking creepy, but again, just hilarious, and it's one of those things where you can really tell that they're buddies kind of at the end of this one. I think the layers kind of crack near the end, which is really interesting. You kind of see a little bit more of a fun Spenny at the very end, because again, these guys have known each other. Kenny and Spenny have known each other since they were little kids. They know all each other's friends. And, you know, just some of the stuff that, again, because Kenny keeps himself within the competition and Spenny is so easily gullible and easily brought out of the competition, Kenny knows that. So the psychological games that go down are just tremendous. It's so good. First one, classic one too, season 4, first one to get a boner loses. This is an interesting one because it kind of highlights the fact that, so Kenny actually has a brother who's a medical doctor. And in the episode, obviously, first got to get a boner. They don't want to see any fucking porn. They don't want to see anything. And each guy's trying to get the other guy to get a boner. And Kenny gets a nerve block in his, like, I don't know what nerve it would be. Anyway, who cares? The nerve that like literally comes from your spine to your penis, he got a nerve block in that. So it's the nerve that they blocked to do like vasectomy for men and stuff to snip their balls. And literally can't feel, like at one point, like Kenny is literally like punched himself in the balls. And at the end, they each get a stripper for each other to try and give themselves a boner. And Kenny gets Spenny a male stripper, and, you know, Spenny gets a super hot stripper for Kenny, but he literally can't feel anything, so he doesn't get a boner. And Spenny gets one because he says he looks over, but who cares, man? If someone's like rubbing up on your dick, you're probably gonna get a boner. And literally, Kenny couldn't physically get one. So again, they cheat. They go outside the rules. They do all kinds of crazy stuff. But it makes you love them. Again, I think personally, you know, my mom's super strict. Like she's a liberal person, but she's pretty straight edge. She could still appreciate the comedy, even though it was super wild. Again, even in today's day and age, there's no chance that this show could ever actually survive. I mean, it lasted to 2010. But just in today's climate where comedy is kind of under the microscope and it's really hard to be as freewheeling and completely liberal. And the problem, again, with comedy right now, the thing with comedy, and one of my favorite quotes is you have to be able to the sign of an intelligent mind is being able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And I think that's the root of comedy, where you can see things play out on stage or in print, or, you know, however you're taking in your comedy, whether it's stand-up, whether it's a movie, whether it's in like literature, that these comedians and these people are taking you down a road that maybe you wouldn't normally go. And one of the reasons why you actually laugh is your brain's making a new connection. I think that's one of the coolest things, is that when your brain hears something, or when you learn a fact, you know, that little huh is a small laugh. That huh moment is a small laugh. And comedians can do that, and they can expand on that moment and make you laugh and belly laugh and continue to laugh and think of a moment. And then comedy can also make you really think. You know, comedians come from the court jesters, where they are meant to tell the kings and queens the truth, but they did it veiled in comedy so that they wouldn't get their heads fucking chopped off for telling the kings and queens right to their face what's up. But they needed someone to tell them. And right now, with cancel culture and things shutting down comedy, we're not even able to entertain some of these thoughts. And I think it's really interesting, again, with a lot of comedians being canceled, that for what they do in their lives, it's tough to separate the art from the artist. And I think we should. At the same time, we shouldn't let abhorrent behavior go unchecked. But again, when these comedians are speaking about things, they're doing it in a comedic venue, in the comedic arena. There should be some protection for them there, and we should listen to what they're saying. And yeah, disregard it, take it with a grain of salt. It is comedy. It's not supposed to be serious. It's supposed to be a joke. It's a joke. That's what that's what it all is. So it's one of those things where, you know, again, you might watch this show. You might say, all right, Mark, I'm going to give this show a shot if you've never seen it. And you might go, what the fuck is Mark on? Is he crazy? It's like the first episode of Black Mirror, which I'll get into another time too. some of this stuff is out there. It's wild. But again, look at the comedy. Look at how both these guys play against each other, the reality of it, the fantasy of it, the bit of kayfabe that happens. It's almost like one's a heel and one is the straight guy. Again, you have this classic interaction, comedy duo interaction that is beautiful and timeless. And again, I know it's Kenny versus Spenny, but I love it. And, shut up, boys, if you guys are listening. I think I actually have a signed picture of the boys too. I'm going to put up a picture on YouTube if you guys are watching. I'll put it up right now. But again, I love you boys. You guys shaped my comedy. I saw Spenny once at a train station in London and he was looking on. I wanted to say something just because I've been part of the show. But again, I just saw him and I said, peace to Spenny. Anyway, love you boys. Love everyone. Check out the show. It's on YouTube, wherever you want. If you liked the podcast today, please like the video, rate, and review it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to it on Spotify. Check us out if you want to support the podcast at patreon.com/thebigmarkpod. And yeah, tell your friends. We love you. Check out some episodes. Let me know what your favorite is in the comments. And we'll talk to you soon. Love y'all. Peace.